All right, I want to watch some growth, some wealth growth mindset strategy. I want to listen to a billionaire talk about investing. Let's do this.
To close out Iconoclast this year, we have Todd Boehly, a visionary and iconic investor who sees
What's up, Steve?
opportunity where others see risk. He didn't just buy a major stake in the Dodgers, he delivered a World Series. He didn't just acquire the Golden Globes, he transformed Hollywood's biggest night. In under a decade at Eldridge, Todd has built a multi-billion-dollar empire spanning sports, media, and entertainment. The common thread: he makes game-winning decisions before the markets even catch the play. Todd, welcome to Iconoclast.
It's great to be here again.
For the second year in a row.
Yes.
Yeah. So your superpower seems to be unlocking hidden value in media and intellectual property. In less than a decade since launching Eldridge Industries, you've amassed a constellation of more than 100 companies and over $72 billion in management at your asset management firm, Eldridge. So take us back to the start. Early in your career, credit wasn't the most coveted path, but it was accessible to you. How did you turn it into your edge?
Well, I think credit is the foundation of our capital markets. And I think if you look at the
Debt is
size
money.
of our
I tell y'all that all the time.
institutions and the evolution of our capital markets, the underpinning is credit. And I think if you look at why America is so successful, it's because we have the best capital markets in the world. And it all starts with credit. And credit was really understanding risk across industries, right? Because when you think about how credit and equity kind of coexist, ultimately, they're just derivatives on the underlying performance of an asset. And if you think about slicing and dicing asset returns, and you think about how much risk you need to take in order to, or how much return you need to get in exchange for how much risk you're going to take, right? I think you can start with the asset. What is the asset likely to return? How volatile is that? And then you figure out, how am I going to price the risk? And I think senior secured risk in credit is a business that you can be in and day out. I think unsecured investment grade risk is a risk that you want to take sometimes when it's cheap, and then when it gets too tight, you want to not be involved. And I think high yield bonds are the same. If you look at the returns over 10 years ago, at the end of 14 to the end of 24, and you look at US investment grade bond returns on Bloomberg, the index, cumulatively, you will have made 28% over 10 years, which is less than 3% per year when you take into compounding. If you own high yield bonds over that same period, you would have made roughly 65% according to the Credit Suisse high yield bond index, that's now the UBS index. If you would have owned the senior secured loan index over that same period of time, which you have seniority to the unsecured high yield bonds, you have floating rates, so you don't have interest rate risk, that's closer to 67, 68%. So I've always thought that credit business at the top of the capital structure was a really good business. And as private credit continues to grow, which to me is kind of a silly name for it, because senior secured lending's always been a private business. It's whether it's been broadly syndicated or not broadly syndicated, but ultimately the risk that you're taking is similar. Is the company worth the debt? Right? As long as the company's worth the debt, whether it's a rocky ride or not, right, you're going to get your money back. So to be able to have so much opportunity to have a front row seat and look at these companies as a lender, knowing that it's kind of like you're dating instead of getting married, because it's easy to get out of, right? And you're kind of got a front row seat without being fully committed. So it was a great way to learn a lot about a lot of different industries at scale.
And so taking that a step further, you have deep roots also in asset management. How is your firm navigating volatility in the credit markets right now?
Again, I think our core focus is staying at the top of the capital structure, making good loans to good businesses. But then when we also see our pattern.
Breaking news. Trump has authorized 2,000 Marines. Shit has been getting worse.
Recognition allows us to identify things that we think are mispriced. And ultimately, if we see value in something, then we want to be able to move really quickly. And I think one of the things that we're set up to do is to be able to move really quickly. And one of the great things about the collection of companies that we have and the collection of businesses is when we were looking at a media opportunity, we can bring A24 into the mix, right? Because A24 is really interested in what's going on in the industry, but because they also have to make movies and content every day, and that's their core business, if we are out there scouting for what's going on in the industry and we see new things and we bring them in, frankly, it allows us to get to diligence quicker. It allows us to expand our reach to be able to understand something more easily. And from the company who we bring A24 to meet, that's seen as a real edge too. So we can do diligence quicker, we can get to the bottom of something easier, we can understand what the operators are talking about, and we show up with something that the operator wants, right? So that collection of capabilities is really what we try to distinguish ourselves with.
So at last year's Iconoclast, you spoke about monetizing premium IP and diversifying revenue streams, and it seems your strategy is paying off. What does the next chapter of growth look like for Eldridge?
Well, we announced that we're building an asset management business, and so what we're doing is identifying strategies where we think there's a lot of scale and where we not only want to be big investors, but we want to leverage into that scale by starting to manage third-party money again. So going back to kind of where we started with Guggenheim, which was managing third-party money and growing that asset management business. And now we've been, over the last 10 years, building our own balance sheet and making our own investments. And we see places where we see good opportunity. And not only do we want to be big investors, but we want to bring others along for the ride. So we've consolidated Maranon, Kane, Panagram, Stonebriar, and that's given us a larger, more diverse credit manager with a sports and media entertainment angle that we think is really unique.
So I can't help myself, the journalist in me, you said you're seeing opportunities that are interesting to you. What broadly can you say about what those opportunities look like?
Well, I think one of the transactions that we did recently was we were able to buy a secondary position in partnership with Dial Blue Owl. So we bought a 10% stake of Dial Fund 3. And what we like about that business is that there's so many elements of return, right? You get a share of the fee-related earnings in general partners. You get a share of their balance sheet, so anytime they make any dividends or distributions, you participate there. And you get basically a long-dated portfolio of call options in the form of carry. Because carry in a portfolio company is to us really a really long-dated call option that has no maturity, but what it has is an increasing call price based on the limited partner hurdle. So I think that was an exciting transaction for us, and we like how it was a good win-win for us and Blue Owl. And the cash flows are coming in as good or better than anticipated. But I think finding things where we can apply our structuring capabilities in order to capitalize on opportunities, because our whole goal in the end is really to use structure to take the potential below zero return outcome off the table. And if we're always thinking about how do we not lose money, and then we think about how to make money, right? There's never really a problem in finance or business or investing, if you don't lose money, right? It's ultimately when you lose a lot of money that you suffer a lot of pain. So what we try to do is to use structure to change the odds, because we think that this is really just all odds. And if we can use structure to change the odds, then we're excited about that. One that we're interested that I've talked about lately is St. James. Right? This is a athletic facility, 550,000 square feet. We've got probably the best facility in the world. And what's happening is sports with NIL, right? College is now professional. So high school is becoming what college was. The demand for sports and sports activity around the world is insatiable.
Right.
So
it's getting younger and younger, right?
And if we're building the best facilities, And now what we're doing is launching schools, right? Then we have every day part. People come in the morning. They come in, in the evening. They come in during the summer. We have the women's football soccer team in DC practicing at our facility. We have Kevin Durant's high school basketball team. We have the Little Caps, the hockey team. Now, by having a school, the only day part that we didn't have covered was the school day. Mm-hmm. So now we've launched a school, so we have several hundred kids coming to school every day there. Well, what we've really found is that because we have the best real estate, we get the best coaches. Because we get the best coaches, we get the best athletes. And then when you think about what we are actually doing for them, before the St. James had a school, and frankly, I think school as we know it is changing. And the idea that you need to be in school for 8 hours a day is absurd, right? It's really like a babysitting exercise more than a schooling exercise in a lot of ways. So we've reduced the schooling element to being a couple hours a day, and these kids now can practice what they want to practice every day. And they don't have to come spend all these hours in school, run home, eat some food, run back out to practice, get back home late, go to bed, get up early. So by consolidating all of that, we've actually created a lot of time for them, and we think we're going to have the best school as well as the best facilities. And we're probably going to, by the end, we'll have one in every city that has a professional sports team.
It also gives you a good playbook, pipeline, right?
A lot of good pipeline.
Yeah.
A lot of good pipeline.
So zooming out a bit, still staying on the strategy playbook, you've described your ambition to build a business that compounds like Berkshire Hathaway and scales like Blackstone or Apollo. How do you think about meeting the demand?
All right, that's cool and all, but I'm bored. Yo, my wife sent me this. Look at this shit, bro. This is insane. People are going crazy. Oh, you can't hear it? How do I get the sound to play? I'm not sure why I can't hear it. We have to do this on a different one, but I guess there was two YouTubers that were beefing, right? And dude was live streaming with him and his wife, and the YouTuber that he was beefing with shoots him on live stream, kills him and his wife. Maybe this is it right here. Yep, this is it. Look, that's his wife, and he shoots her next. He shot her too. Bro, 384 people on his live, bro. Don't bring your ass over here starting no shit. Killed him, bro.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Damn, bro. That's the dude right there. That's crazy. So I went to find the shooter's YouTube page, and apparently he must have deleted it. It's no longer available. But the guy who he shot, this is his channel. Damn, that's the live stream. No way. Bro, just be live streaming, bro. He just be live streaming in Vegas. Why?